Hey, it's Mr. E here. Our aim for this video is what are three types of statistical studies that are used to collect data? Okay, so there's three types of studies we're going to look at, and they are the survey, the experimental study, and the observational study. So let's look at the survey first. So a survey is So it says survey. Statistical surveys are used to collect quantitative information from a specific population. A survey may focus on opinions or factual information depending upon the purpose of the study. Surveys may involve answering a questionnaire or being interviewed by a researcher. The census is a type of survey. So let me just give you an example of a survey I found online, and we could talk a little bit more about surveys in a bit. So here is an article I found on online dating and relationships. So you can see here. And this is from the pewinternet.org website. And here's what it says. 1 in 10 Americans have used an online dating site or mobile dating app. 66% of these online daters have gone on a date with someone they met through a dating site or app, and 23% have met a spouse or long-term partner through these sites. So where do they get these numbers from? Where do these percentages come from? Well, if you read down here about the survey, they come from the survey, and more specifically, this report is based on the findings of a survey on Americans' use of the internet. The results in this report are based on data from telephone interviews conducted by Princeton Survey Research Associates International from April 17th to May 19th, 2013, among a sample of 2,252 adults age 18 or older. Telephone interviews were conducted in English and Spanish by landline and cell phone. So 1,125 were landline, and it says, and cell phone 1,127, including 571 without a landline phone. So you hear there's a little information about how they conducted the survey. But the point is, they pulled all this information together in regards to online dating and relationships from this survey that they conducted. So it's always a good idea when performing a survey to have a large sample. So that's why you see here that they got a sample of 2,252 adults. So the bigger the sample, the better. And it's also a good idea to have randomization in the survey. In other words, you want the survey to be as random as possible. The best surveys are the most randomized, meaning that there isn't a bias in the survey that can influence the study in favor of one outcome over the other. So let's look at an example. A survey completed at a neighborhood asked 2,000 of its residents if they were okay with the idea of writing "Let's Go New York Giants" on the neighborhood welcome sign. To be included in the survey, you had to be a New York Giants season ticket holder. Which characteristic of the survey could create a bias in the results? So it's not the size of the sample, because they interviewed 2,000 people. That's not what the problem is. What the problem with conducting this survey is that you're asking New York Giants season ticket holders. So think about that. You're asking them if they're okay with the idea of writing "Let's Go Giants" on the neighborhood welcome sign. I mean, what do you think they're going to say? You see, the problem with this survey is that the people you're selecting to be in the survey are not selected randomly. Okay? Of course, they're going to say yes, that they want to write "Let's Go New York Giants" on the neighborhood welcome sign. They're Giant fans, for Christ's sakes. So, of course, they're going to be okay with it. So, to answer this question, which characteristic of the survey could create a bias? The answer is going to be choice 4, the method of choosing who gets surveyed. Okay, so to summarize, survey is just a way to collect information from a specific population. And the more randomization in the survey, the better. And the bigger the sample that gets interviewed, the better. Okay, another type of study that's performed is the experimental study. In an experimental study, the researcher takes measurements or surveys the sample population. The researcher then manipulates the sample population in some manner. After the manipulation, the researcher remeasures or resurveys using the same procedures to determine if the manipulation possibly changed the measurement. So let me give you an example about this. So here we have somebody who conducted their own experimental study in regards to Celtec and Nitrotech. So if you're not familiar with Celtec and Nitrotech, Celtec and Nitrotech is basically a product that's used to build muscle mass. And so let's read what this person wrote. Let me see if I can zoom into that a little bit. It says, "Okay, guys, secretly I conducted a placebo-controlled experiment using Celtec/Nitrotech supplementation over a period of 12 months. At first, I was skeptical due to the research that Big Cat had done, but I wanted to go a step further and show everyone here that MuscleTech was a legit company, just trying to give the customer the edge in creatine/protein supplements. I conducted this experiment using 6 people. 3 were given the recommended serving of Celtec, and the other 3 were given an unspecified brand name of creatine monohydrate mixed with orange juice. As you can see, the effects of Celtec were overwhelming, and the amount of mass that was actually attained while using the product was clearly not expected." So here's a person that is curious about whether or not Celtec works. So what this person did was it found 6 people, and it gave 3 people Celtec, and it gave the other 3 people a placebo. So a placebo is basically they're gonna get they're not getting they're gonna get a fake. They're not gonna get Celtec, just to see if it really makes a difference. So 3 people got Celtec, and then 3 people got placebo. And that's what an experimental study is. An experimental study manipulates the population in some way. So let's look at an example. Tylenol wants to test their new line of cough syrup. To do this, they select 2 groups. One group will receive the actual cough syrup, and the other group a placebo. So the other group is going to get the fake. They're not going to get the real Tylenol. After a couple of days, they will compare the results of the 2 groups. Which type of study best describes this situation? So it's not a survey. We looked at what a survey is already. And it's not observation. We'll look at why it's not observation in a bit, but let's just say that in an observation, you do not manipulate the people in the experiment. And it's not a census, because a census is a type of survey. So the answer is it's a controlled experiment. And the reason it's a controlled experiment is because you're manipulating one of the groups. So whenever there's manipulation, it's an experiment. Okay? One group is getting cough syrup, the other group is not getting cough syrup. And then you're just going to compare them. That's a controlled experiment. Okay, lastly, an observational study. In an observational study, the sample population being studied is measured or surveyed as it is. So that's the important piece. As it is. The researcher does not influence the population in any way or attempt to intervene in the study. There is no experimental manipulation. Instead, data is simply gathered and correlations are investigated. Okay, a school principal wants to see if a student's misbehavior is triggered by one of his classmates. To verify this, the principal watches and observes, that should say, and observes the students' daily interactions through the hallway camera. Which study best describes the kind of study the principal performed? So it's not a survey because there were no questions being asked. And it's not a controlled experiment because the principal did not manipulate the population. She just observed. So the answer is it's an observational study. And it's not a census because a census is a type of survey. Okay, so to summarize, we looked at 3 ways to collect statistical data. One way is to survey, which is just asking people a set of questions. One way is to perform an experiment. So in an experiment, there is manipulation. And the other one is observational. So in observational, you're just watching, you're not manipulating you're not manipulating the population. Okay, I hope this video helps. Take care.